Hello and welcome back to Echoes from the Bog. This episode is all about peatland protection on a global level. What are the projects, the politics and policy making that go into a global approach to peatland protection? Who is working on this and what motivates them? And why is it important to think about peatland protection both on a local or regional scale, but also on a scale beyond that? A global approach to wetland protection recognizes that these squishy ecosystems do not follow political borders. Water flows across countries, migratory species depend on chains of habitats, and carbon released in one region affects the entire planet's climate. At the same time, a global approach must be wary of ignoring power dynamics between countries and deep-rooted colonial patterns. This global approach can take the form of more information sharing between countries and continents, coordinating actions, sharing funding on common goals. At its best, it helps aligning local land use decisions with global priorities like climate mitigation, biodiversity protection, and sustainable development. But a global approach must be careful not to erase or overrule local and traditional people's knowledge and perspectives on their peatlands. This is, of course, a topic that has been much in the news in November during the COP30 meeting in Belém, Brazil. This meeting is organized by the United Nations Climate Change Convention, also known as the UNCCC. This is a large gathering of countries that are part of the United Nations. They come together and make pledges to different climate goals, and it is one of the largest global gatherings. A second event focused on the international protection of wetlands specifically that happened this year was the Wetlands Convention. It took place in Victoria Falls, Zimbabwe, and the attendees were representatives of 170 countries of the Ramsar Convention, an international conservation treaty focused on wetlands. There's so many organizations and abbreviations, but let's make it a little bit more concrete. How do all of these treaties and conventions benefit peatlands? With Eva Hernández, we will talk about the action that goes into finding the right people in the right moment to support peatland protection on the ground. Eva works with Wetlands International and will tell us about the Peatland Breakthrough, a group of organizations including RE-PEAT, Greifswald Maya Center, and UNCCC working together in this breakthrough and use these COP meetings to materialize funds and align projects. Then we have a conversation with Cisca Devereux, working at the UN Environment Programme. She's also working on the Peatland Breakthrough, but with her we'll focus on work that makes a point for engaging youth in the global environmental protection efforts. She will share her experiences and will tell us about the importance of youth and peat in these global decision-making processes. Hopefully these conversations with Eva and Cisco will shed a light on the big picture of global peatland protection.
We're here with Eva Hernández from Wetlands International. Welcome, Eva, to Echoes from the Bog. Can you maybe give a short introduction of yourself?
Hi, I'm Eva Hernández, head of the Peatlands team at Wetlands International, the only global environmental NGO fully devoted to wetlands. I am a biologist and, above all, I consider myself an environmentalist. I have been working on wetlands, water, and agriculture for more than 20 years now, always from the NGO side.
Thank you, super interesting. Can you maybe explain also a bit what the Peatland Breakthrough is?
The Peatland Breakthrough is a joint call to action. It's an collaborative effort to mobilize action on funding to conserve, re-wet, and restore and enable the sustainable and wise use of peatlands globally. Caring for peatlands will allow to maintain or recover their essential functions to support climate goals, but also water security, biodiversity, and people's livelihoods. And what does the Peatland Breakthrough actually do? Well, we work to raise awareness on how relevant peatlands are to maintain the planet within livable limits. Peatlands, too often go unnoticed, and they need to move from being the secret tool to a rock star of climate mitigation and adaptation. The Peatland Breakthrough has worked with science to define global targets for peatlands, so we can stay below 1.5 hopefully, temperature increase. And what these global targets say in brief is that by 2030, we need to stop the drainage of intact peatlands, and we need to start re-wetting and restoring 30 million hectares of degraded peatlands, and also enable sustainable wise use. So by 2050, any use of peatlands is wise. It's compatible with flooding and with the function of peatlands. And having these targets is extremely relevant because it allows for any stakeholder acting on peatlands to align. So it doesn't matter if a stakeholder acts individually or as part of an existing network or creating new ones, but all these efforts will be aligned and pushing, contributing in the same direction. And to reach those targets, we need action. We need more than words. Again, this is what the Peatland Breakthrough is all about. It's about calling for action, mobilizing it. It doesn't matter if it's a small restoration, if it's a large polyculture project, if you're working with a small community or with a large investor, there is room for all, as long as we comply with some basic and logical principles respecting biodiversity, people, transparency, climate sustainability, landscape approach. We need this pipeline of projects, no? Right now, there are many small projects that add to one another. There are some countries where action is broader, maybe, but compared to these 30 million hectares that we need to restore or start restoring by 2030, the surface being restored right now is really tiny. So we need to multiply, we need to come up with new ideas of small and large scale projects, and we also need to come up with a long list of donors, investors. It doesn't matter if it's governments or private entities, because we need to fund action. We need a pipeline of projects. It doesn't matter if they're small or big. If we want to come up with 30 million hectares by 2030 being restored and re-wet, we need a long pipeline of projects, and we also need a long list of donors and investors, be it governments or private entities, because we need 100 billion US dollars by 2030 to fund action. That's the estimation that we have by now. It may be more if you compare it to the cost of building a kilometer of highway, which is around $5-6 million. It's not that much, no? Finally, we also need to increase knowledge on peatlands. We need to know better where they are, because that's not known everywhere, in which health status they are, and how they are evolving in the light of the new interventions implemented on them. On the short term, we want all countries with peatlands to properly map and monitor them sooner than later. No? By 2030, 5 years from now, ideally, we should have a great difference from the current situation.
And after this more theoretical explanation, can you explain what your work on the Peatland Breakthrough entails, like what you do in a day-to-day basis?
So how does this look in reality? Well, there's lots of meetings, lots of talking, lots of thinking, strategizing, and joint work. This first year has been a lot about designing the machinery, define how the Peatland Breakthrough will operate, where do we want to go with these targets that we want to reach, what do we need to do to make it happen, who do we want on board. And it's very good that we are doing this as a coalition. Working in a coalition takes time, but also saves time. We have very strong partners like UNEP, the UN Environment Programme, Greifswald-Meyer Center, FAO. We are working in line with the Global Peatlands Initiative. We are getting support from the Ramsar Convention on Wetlands. And now we are in the phase of bringing more partners on board. So we have the Global Environment Center, Landscape Finance Lab, the Nature Conservancy, and RE-PEAT, of course. And we're also inviting governments to join the Peatland Breakthrough. We had Peru announcing they're joining the Peatland Breakthrough during Ramsar COP15, Uganda right afterwards, and Germany confirmed they are on board during this Climate COP30 in Brazil. We are also talking with companies, with banks, public and private, with philanthropy, because we need, as I said, plenty of money to mobilize. We need to mobilize 100 billion US dollars, but we also need smaller funding to make it happen. We need smaller funding to design projects, to support the smaller entities, to coordinate work, to communicate. And that's where we are. No, there's a lot of engagement work being done and fundraising work also. And actually, there's very little time in the field. Sometimes you're lucky, you can go to a peatland and get your feet wet when you have some visit, or you go to a site where we are working. Because at Wetlands International, we also have our feet on the ground. So it's not only about offices, computers, and corridors. We're active in several horizon projects in Europe, for example. We're in Waterlands, in Wet Horizons, in Paluwise, but we're also working abroad. We are restoring peatlands with local communities in Mongolia and in Peru. We are protecting peatlands in Argentina, or we have been mapping them in Uganda or India. So yeah, there's also time for work on the ground. It's not us from the office in the Netherlands who are implementing. It is our colleagues in the offices in other countries. But yeah, it's part of the same organization.
And now I'm really curious, what drives you? What is your passion? What connects you to peatlands specifically?
My passion for peatlands. I like the magic of peatlands. You don't see it up front, but it's there, no? In the amount of water those sponges hold. So when you have your handful sphagnum and you squeeze it, and it's amazing the amount of water that comes out of it, no? But it's not only the water, it's the carbon that we cannot see, and thinking that they can store it for centuries, keeping us safe without asking for anything in exchange. But it's also about the biodiversity, no? So who would have thought that an orangutan lives on top of a peatland? And well, sometimes not so evident biodiversity, like tiny fish or orchids, or the 20 shades of red that sphagnum can have. But you know what I like too? That you can also make money out of restoring and using peatlands properly. It's probably one of the ecosystems where you can most easily find bankability in nature-based solutions. And that can make it attractive for investors not to destroy them, but to conserve them. And I think that's a very nice starting point to work with nature for economy, for the society, with one of the most evidence ecosystems. No?
And lastly, I want to ask you, what do you think the role is of these global approaches and the role of the local approaches? Like, is there a tension between these scales or not?
Both local and global approaches are necessary. With the Peatland Breakthrough, we're taking this top-down, let's say, global to local approach, but also local to global. I don't actually think there's a tension. They are complementary. No, we need action to happen on the ground. We know it is when you collaborate with local communities, when you understand what their struggles are, their needs are, the opportunities. That's when you really make things happen. But how do you multiply this? You need the global scale there, no? You need the global targets, for example, that we have defined with the Peatland Breakthrough to align action. You need multilateral agreements, you need the commitments of the governments, legal structures, legal frameworks, also large actors to come into action. Yeah, you need both scales, no? I mean, that slogan was invented already in 1992, think globally, act locally, but it is still as valid now as it was then. Yeah, I mean, maybe more than thinking globally is also acting globally, not only thinking and acting locally. It's mobilizing action. We cannot just look and expect someone else to do it, because it's our planet, it's our need, and it's also our responsibility. So if we can really make a difference through protecting or conserving re-wetting and restoring and using peatlands wisely, let's do it. It's a tiny surface of the planet that we need to take care of, with huge benefits in terms of carbon storage, but also water security, livelihoods, and of course, biodiversity.
Thank you, Eva, for joining us on the podcast. Thanks for sharing your insights. It was really great to have you.
Thank you. It was great to join you in this podcast, and I hope I can come back sometime again. Thanks. Bye.
It's so interesting to hear about the Peatland Breakthrough. There's clearly so much excitement for that pipeline of projects coming together, including restoration and conservation action for peatlands all over the world. Thank you for sitting in all of these meetings, Eva, and other Wetlands International people. We at RE-PEAT are so excited to support and follow the Peatland Breakthrough. Now we will continue with our second guest, Cisca, from the UN Environment Programme in Nairobi, to talk about her work with youth and how it connects to what we discussed with Eva.
My name is Cisca Devereux. I'm from Ireland, a country with very many bogs. Actually, 1/5 of all of Ireland is peatlands. But I'm from Dublin. So actually, I grew up calling everybody outside of Dublin boggers. Not being a bogger myself, but I think now you'll see that I really am a bogger. So I'm a volunteer at RE-PEAT. I'm part of the Peatland Justice Campaign. I'm also part of the core team for Youth Engaged in Wetlands, which is an international platform that supports the implementation of the Ramsar Convention on Wetlands mission in the conservation and sustainable management of wetlands, and peatlands being a very special and precious type of wetland. I'm also a consultant with the UN Environment Programme-led Global Peatlands Initiative.
Let's focus a bit on your work with youth, because you have quite some experience with involving youth on this global peatland protection. So can you maybe tell me about why it is important to have youth involved in peatland action on the global level and in policymaking?
So, as we know, youth will be disproportionately affected by climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution, this triple planetary crisis that we're facing. So this means that it is a true democratic legitimacy to have youth involved when it comes to policy making on the global level and on the national level for peatlands. We're seeing very high rising youth populations, particularly in the global south. So involving youth is going to be really key to having effective and just solutions, and making sure that youth perspectives are heard and considered. I guess also youth more tangibly feel the urgency of this climate crisis and are really crying out for change at speed and at scale, as well as that youth are just really active contributors to peatlands conservation. Peatlands need effective solutions that are also shaped by youth, because peatlands really do matter on the global agenda. And their conservation, restoration, and sustainable management are really powerful nature-based solutions to tackle this triple planetary crisis. And we know peatlands will either be part of the problem or a key element of the climate solution, particularly when we look at the Paris Agreement. We know from the Global Peatlands Assessment, which was carried out in 2022, and is a huge assessment of the state of the world's peatlands. And this found that even though peatlands cover just 3% of the planet's land surface, they do contain up to 1/3 of the world's soil carbon. But however, this assessment also revealed that the Earth loses 500,000 hectares of peatlands a year, and that a lot of peatlands is already degraded and destroyed and drained, up to 50 million hectares, which contribute to our human-caused emissions on a huge scale, 4%, which for scale is more than the shipping and aviation industries combined. So we know protecting these intact peatlands and restoring degraded peatlands are one of the most cost-effective and high-impact strategies for peatlands. But to tackle this, we do need solutions that are working at speed and at scale, and take in a whole of society approach. So we would love to see more intergenerational leadership when we approach this, because we know involving youth means that we're going to hold the politicians in the room accountable for the decisions they're making that will affect our future. We want them to raise the ambitions and also co-create solutions with youth that are effective and fair.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of crazy to see in these reports like the Global Peatland Assessment how hard the numbers speak for the importance of these quite rare but worldwide ecosystems or landscape types. So to continue talking about what this global peatland protection looks like in practice this year, we saw that there were two major COPs. First, the Convention on Wetlands, COP15 in Zimbabwe in the summer. And more recently, last month, we saw the UNFCCC COP30 in Belém. How did youth and peatlands play a role here?
Yeah, so across a lot of major events this year, we saw that the momentum for peatlands and youth are both really growing. And this is across different regions, different sectors, and across different disciplines as well. So this year in July was COP15 for the Ramsar Convention on Wetlands, whose mission is the conservation and sustainable management of wetlands. Here we saw a huge youth movement involved. There was over 30 youth delegates there with 4 youth-led side events. RE-PEAT was a co-organizer of one of them, where we really looked at from resolution to action and how the youth resolution is being implemented across different regions. Europe being representing Europe in this case. So the last youth resolution was adopted at COP14, so 3 years ago. And I'm happy to say that the second youth resolution was also adopted at COP15 this year. It is about youth empowerment and integration and to drive engagement in the longevity of the Convention on Wetlands. So what this youth resolution did was it has now re-established a youth working group until 2028. This youth working group will then establish long-term recommendations and a new youth resolution for COP16. A very important element is that it also encourages inclusion in national delegations and processes. So it encourages all member states to appoint a youth delegate as part of their Ramsar committee. And it also really encouraged synergies with other MEAs, the other multi-environmental agreements, such as the UNFCCC or COPs or CBD, and to really find synergies there of how we work together. There was also one major event on peatlands for the Global Peatlands Initiative as well. It's particularly focusing on driving South-South cooperation for peatlands. So then at COP30, we saw a lot of movement happening for peatlands. There was over 11 different side events that included peatlands. Indonesia took a really big lead on this as well. We saw huge reaffirmations to commitments to work together for peatlands, especially between South-South cooperation, but also for cooperation with academia and also the private sector, really showing how a whole of society approach is really going to be part of this solution. So we really hope that maybe at the next COP we can also see youth being brought into this and having a specific focus on youth, which unfortunately we didn't see at this COP. But we also saw a lot of peatlands events showing the importance of peatlands and their role for climate, biodiversity and people in multiple pavilions, so also across the Asian pavilion, the Ukrainian, East African community, German, and the food routes and roots. Again, showing how this momentum is really accelerating across different regions and sectors.
Yeah, great. That sounds like a lot of action on this COP. Really cool to see. Earlier on the podcast, we were talking with Eva Hernández, who talked with us about the Peatland Breakthrough. And of course, this Peatland Breakthrough also played a big role in this past COP30. Can you discuss more about the role of youth in this Peatland Breakthrough?
Yes, definitely. So, the the Peatland Breakthrough is this real call to action and step on the accelerator ahead of 2030. And it's really important that we really bring in the whole of society in order to really design these solutions together and really accelerate the action and investments that we need to achieve our goals in the Paris Agreement. So the role youth are playing, it's actually through RE-PEAT at the moment. So RE-PEAT are part of the working group on communications. So they're really part of shaping the narrative and the ambition of the Peatland Breakthrough. This is really well aligned with the work of RE-PEAT to support emerging transformative narratives for peatlands and changing hearts and minds for and through peatlands. So we really hope that all this energy we have in RE-PEAT is brought also into the Peatland Breakthrough. And here we can also echo the spirit of youth through the Peatland Breakthrough.
Thank you for connecting this. I think it's really nice. And if I can ask you lastly, what would be your call to action for the youth peatland community when it comes to global policymaking?
Yeah, so my call to action, and also as a youth myself, would be to stay youthful and to keep a youthful approach as well. So be energetic, be innovative, be rebellious, raise ambitions. Also very important to be specific and to focus on the possible. But again, also don't stop asking the hard questions. And this is what youth bring to the table, and how they can help to transform narratives and really the ambitions around our global policy making. When it comes to more practical actions, I would really highly recommend joining a local group or an international group such as RE-PEAT. My experience has been incredible in terms of capacity building, connecting with a community of like-minded people, and being able to really see the impact that we have together through our actions as a youth collective. There's also a lot of opportunities within your national delegation. So for the Ramsar Convention on Wetlands, which tackles wetlands and peatlands, there's currently 50 youth delegates appointed to the national delegations, but there's a total of 173 countries involved. So I would really encourage you to check on the website if there is already or not a youth national focal point, and if so, if not, to reach out and to become involved. You can check out the Youth Engaged in Wetlands website if you want more information. There's also a lot of opportunities just to simply write to your politicians. This is a way to really get involved and to voice your opinions. And to have a look also what events might be going on in your region. For example, this weekend I attended the Youth Environment Assembly led by UNEP, which saw over 500 youth leaders come together from all different disciplines. So it was amazing to be able to represent peatlands there, and it really gave me a lot of energy to see what's really going on. But I also have a call to action for those who are not youth, and how we can move away from just symbolic participation of youth and move to active actions with intentional and sustained, and that's backed by resources and respect. We need to see more youth-friendly spaces. We need more mentors, and we need more people to commit to also capacity building to really grow the leaders of today and tomorrow. But also really, as mentioned, to provide resources, particularly for the Global South, in order to participate.
A big thank you to Cisca and Eva for doing such great work and sharing some of it with us. We hope you have enjoyed listening to this episode and now have a bit more of an overview of what happens behind the scenes of international peatland protection. It is a reminder that real change takes cooperation. We will keep our eyes open for the Peatland Breakthrough and keep supporting youth and their strong connection to peatlands. It is thanks to people like Eva and Cisca who work on such projects, secure large funding and coordinate knowledge sharing that we can bear witness to peatland protection projects happening in real time in our own neighbourhoods. Thank you for listening, and if you have your own story to tell, maybe you live near a peatland, work with wet landscapes, or simply feel drawn to these ecosystems, we'd love to hear from you. You can reach out to us on Instagram at @re-PEAT.earth or send us an email at info@re-PEAT.earth. We're always looking for new voices, perspectives, and stories to share. Who knows, maybe you'll be featured on a future episode of Echoes from the Bog. Until next time, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you down in the bog.